they're underwater because the government took the excess funds. When there were excess funds, they took it out of there and left IOUs. So it's not that it's unsustainable, it's simply not payable, just like our debts and our deficits. In the meantime, this is peak gold has already arrived.
Prepare to be swept away on an extraordinary odyssey with the incomparable Lynette Zang. In her groundbreaking exploration, she unveils the enigmatic truths behind the retirement crisis, transforming complexity into clarity with her unparalleled expertise. With Lynette Zang as our guide, we'll unlock the secrets to financial liberation and rewrite the narrative of our future. Get ready for an unforgettable voyage. This is not just information, it's a revolution in the making. So, let's listen to her again.
And, today I want to talk a little bit more about the retirement crisis and how important it is to have a reset, because it's not just that it's not sustainable. In the US, these pay-as-you-go programs like Social Security and Medicare are deeply in trouble because of the diminishing fertility rates and fewer women having more babies to support these pay-as-you-go systems. Now, I'm going to talk about all of that, but I want to remind you that in the beginning with Social Security, there were roughly 153 workers to support one beneficiary. The most current data shows that there's 2.1 workers to support each beneficiary. And so if we are not producing as many babies or children that can then support this system, what do you think is going to happen? So let's just dive right in. Global fertility rates set to crash, triggering staggering social change. Well, the World Economic Forum has already said socially, economically, and financially, yes, this entire system is resetting. Are you ready for that change? Because in order to maintain its population size, which already is not enough to support these pay-as-you-go programs, a country requires a fertility rate of 2.1 children per woman. Are we getting that? Well, let's take a look. The global fertility rate has already halved over the past 70 years, from around 5 children per female in 1950 to 2.2 in 2021. And quite honestly, that's even gotten worse since 2021. The sharp drop in fertility will have profound effects on populations, economics, geopolitics, food security, health, and the environment as countries grapple with an elderly population and heavily reduced workforce. So this is an issue on a global basis, and they need a crisis to wipe out all of these systems, to be honest with you, and all of these entitlement programs, which legally you're not really entitled to, by the way, and be able to start fresh. So you have to ask yourself, how and when will this shift impact you? And especially, again, in these pay-as-you-go programs. The demographic and economic outlook in 4 figures, and this is in the US. So you can see now immigration becomes even more important. And we know that we have a lot of issues around the border control and what's happening on the immigration front and a stay of anybody coming into this country illegally being deported. I mean, there's a lot that's going on in here, but countries are going to be competing more and more for workers, for talent. So we need to keep this in mind in our planning, because as these demographics shift, the power may shift. Because whoever has a population that can support its economy is certainly going to be much better off. And we do know that in China, there is a quiet revolution that's happening in that women just refusing not to have babies because it's got childcare and managing and feeding and educating our children. all over the world, frankly, has gotten so much more expensive. And we do know that incomes typically do not keep pace with inflation. And frankly, that's by design. But let's take a look at these pay-as-you-go programs so that you can get an idea of what we're looking at. Okay, so this is outlays by category, and this is net interest income. And frankly, we've been compounding interest, even though that's not the way that it's presented to you. But I took a look at this back in, I think it was 2009, because at that point, we were, for the first time, running $1 trillion deficit, and yet we were paying $13 trillion in debt. Now it's over 35. But in 2009, it was about 13 trillion. And I said to myself, well, wait a minute. If we haven't been running these massive deficits and we've just been running this $1 trillion deficit, why are we servicing 13 trillion in debt? So you can go in on the FRED, the Federal Reserve Education Department website, and you can look at that background data. And that's when I saw that not only with the income, that the government was spending far more income than they had coming in taxes and fees and all of that stuff, but we've been compounding interest. So we're not even paying the principal, let alone all of the interest. That then goes into the principal, and you're paying interest on top of interest on top of interest. Why can't they just do that for the Social Security program, though that is always under the knife, although politically unpopular? So you can see from these graphs how the net interest grows. You can also see how the Social Security costs are going to grow and other mandatory, here's major medical health care programs. So these programs are simply, well, they're already in deficits. They're already in deficits. It will become, to support everything that we're doing, will become too expensive once enough risk has been transferred from the few, from those that are in power, that those that have all the advantages, to the many. Then you'll see this whole system roll over and reset, because we got to start over. I mean, there's really no choice about it. Average annual growth of real potential GDP and its components. Well, a big component of GDP is inflation. Composition of growth in outlays of the major health care programs and Social Security specifically. Growth in spending on the major health care programs is largely driven by cost growth. That's called inflation, people. Above and beyond that accounted for the demographic changes. Yeah, inflation. They expect that inflation is going to heat up, and we've been hearing about how sticky it is and how shocking it is. I'm going to do a piece on that, because raising interest rates when you're at the end of a currency's life cycle doesn't work. Spending on those programs, as well as spending on Social Security benefits, is also boosted by the aging population. So we have more people aging, fewer people being born. Who's going to support these programs? Especially since they're pay-as-you-go programs. It made sense when you had a lot more workers to support the beneficiaries, but you don't anymore. And you've got to understand, entitlement programs, even though they're called entitlement programs, even though you've paid into them most likely your entire lives, and that amount that you've contributed is higher and higher and higher, and it's going to be even higher still, they're underwater because the government took the excess funds. When there were excess funds, they took it out of there and left IOUs. So it's not that it's unsustainable, it's simply not payable, just like our debts and our deficits. In the meantime, peak gold has already arrived, because while there's an unlimited amount of this, right, they can print as much money as they want. Of course, the value of that money that's out there goes down. But there is a finite amount of this, whether it's in the ground or above ground. And we have already hit peak gold, which means that there is less in the ground to mine. That was back in 2018. Then there is left to to mine. That's a problem that's actually not a problem. People ask me all the time, well, there's just not enough gold to back a currency. Yeah, there's plenty of gold. That's one of the reasons, a big reason why gold has held its purchasing power over time is because there is a finite amount of it. Is it that gold is really worth 21, 22, 5,000, 10,000? No, it's because this is worth that much less. So in terms of gold, when they do those overnight resets and they take this stuff that has absolutely zero intrinsic value is used in only one place and they revalue it overnight against this stuff of which there is a finite amount of it, that's when you will see gold move toward its fundamental value. Not the first go around. I can't tell you how many overnight resets we're going to have through this process. I can tell you that globally on average, that's 3. But we could have 4 or 5. It depends on how long it takes the public to lose all confidence in the powers that be. And what's happening in that spot market? Well, we've had that breakout, right? There's your spot gold contract, and we had, 4 tops that we were looking at. And now we have the breakout. This should not be a surprise. We actually had the breakout, which I've shown you in previous videos here. And then it took a while to work off any excess, and here you go. So is the spot contract going higher? Yes, of course it is. But like any of these paper contracts, they can create as much of it as they want. Why isn't spot gold still down at $300 an ounce or $20 an ounce like it was back in 1913? Because the pressure is growing. It's like spot gold is like in a pressure cooker. They're going to have to suppress it because a rising gold price is an indication of a failing currency. But at the end of the day, they'll need gold to go to its fundamental value to reset the system. So that's what we're looking at here. We've got to become our own central bankers. There is part of the strategy is based upon making sure that you can afford your medical care, that you can afford food, that you can make sure that you can maintain where you're living and the property taxes and any debts that you have, et cetera, et cetera. I'm suggesting that you be your best advocate and put your best interest first.
Before we wrap up, remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more empowering content like this. Join our community and let's continue this journey together. If you enjoyed today's video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Until next time, stay curious and keep striving for greatness. Thank you for being part of our community.